Welcome to Sports Tonight, everybody. I'm sports producer Scott Pennyman here with my guy, Frederick Campagna. And you know when Fred is in the house, you already know what our topics are going to be, right?
I don't pick these topics, but it just happens to coincide. So I'm guessing sports will be topics tonight.
Well, we'll be talking a lot of sports, but more specifically.
NBA. Well, it is NBA season, right? We got a little NFL, I think, maybe mixed in, or mostly NBA. Well, maybe what's on my mind will be some NFL.
Well, we got some NBA. Obviously, it's the NBA playoff time, right? So I mean, obviously, we want to hit the NBA hard, and then we'll get into some a little bit of NFL too. But
it's that long haul of the NBA postseason.
For sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a grind. And so there are ebbs and flows. And we can talk about that as well.
So let's jump right into the first. So obviously the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors will play in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs, right? So we all know about the series and we all know, but I want to dig deeper into just more so LeBron and Steph Curry, right? I mean, I think most people would agree that those two guys are pretty much the dominant players over the last decade in the NBA. I mean, as far as championships won, as far as how far those guys take their teams. So, look, I have a pretty in-depth opinion, so I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh, okay, I go first.
I'll let you go first.
Well, what is the question?
So my question is,
put me on the spot.
Yeah. So when you look at LeBron James, I mean, he's kind of universally thought of as being no less than the second or third best player in the history of the NBA, right?
Yeah.
However, I think it's kind of awkward. It's kind of weird because has he really even dominated his era? Because when you look at his era of basketball, when you look at the last 10 to 15 years, I think Steph Curry can lay just the same amount of claim as far as him being a leader of his team and his franchise. He's won just as many championships as LeBron James. He's defeated LeBron 3 out of 4 times in a playoff series. So if Steph Curry and the Warriors do win this series against the Lakers, what does that say for LeBron James' legacy, I guess, kind of as far as being the player of his era?
I think he's still clearly the player of his era. Just the longevity, the durability, the teams that he, some of the teams that he won titles with. The Cleveland team, that he won a title with was not, in my estimation, an incredibly good team. Still get it done. So I still put LeBron ahead of Steph. I mean, I see where you're coming from with Steph, but that supporting cast in Golden State, I think that by and large they've had better coaching at Golden State than some of LeBron's teams that he's had that have maybe made the finals but not won it. I think that Clay and Draymond have been there for the titles with Steph, Durant for 2, right? So Durant for a couple. Yeah. So that's super team right there. So when you look at that, LeBron obviously did it with Miami. That was super team-esque for sure. But I just think that LeBron's longevity, the way he's playing right now at 38 is incredible. When you look at what Steph did Sunday to the Kings, that was a legacy game. For sure. 50 burger on them in a Game 7.
Yep.
So that was huge, no doubt about that. I think you'd have to ask me in 2 months after Steph wins with the Golden State Warriors this season where I stand. I might have a slightly different opinion, and maybe that was the question, is if Steph does it this year, do you then do it? So I think if Steph does it this year, then I think it's kind of a valid argument, although Steph hasn't had the regular season durability that LeBron has had. It's undeniable when he has more championships than LeBron has had. Not as many finals appearances, not as long of a career, but still, that'd be impressive. But I can't wait to hear your in-depth take, so let's go.
Well, I just kind of look, I grew up, I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. I love LeBron. Let me first start off by saying that because you know how social media works this day and age. Man, when there comes to a LeBron James topic, people will wring your neck if you don't sort of preface things the correct way. I mean, nothing will see social media jump down your head faster than you saying something insulting about LeBron James. Let me first say, I love LeBron James. I feel that he's the second or third best player I've ever seen play basketball, right? However, it is kind of alarming it really does jump out at you when you look at LeBron James' career and just the kind of the decade. He really, when you look at some of the dominant players before him, when you look at Magic Johnson, when you look at Magic and Kareem, when you look at even the Shaq and Kobe era, there was a dominant era for all of those players. There was an era, at least a piece of time, that those guys really dominated. When you look at Kobe Bryant, he won 5 championships in the 2000s decade. There was a dominant time for all those guys. When you look at LeBron James' dominant era, it's really kind of tied with Steph Curry. And Steph Curry, oh, by the way, has beat him 3 out of 4 times on that final stage. So I think that if Golden State wins this series and Steph Curry goes on to win a championship with Golden State, it's going to be hard to look at this era as an era that was dominated by LeBron James when there's another guy in your era who's almost been just as good, dominated you head-to-head, and has more championships. Like, it's going to be really hard to make an argument for LeBron James. It's definitely going to be hard to make an argument for him being the best player to ever play, but it's going to be really hard to make an argument that he's even the best player of his own era.
I'm just not buying it. I mean, I'm looking back through some of the statistics. Not really stats, just Finals MVP. Steph's only won it once.
True.
LeBron's won it 4 times, I think.
Yeah, but and see, let me just sort of
KD
intervene.
won it both years that he won with the Warriors.
Yeah, so I'll just intervene with that one a little bit right there. To me, that says something about Steph Curry, right? Because when you look at Steph Curry, he won his first championship.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, because
so he gets to the finals and it's like, you know what? I'm just going to let someone else win Finals MVP.
No, I just think it says something about, like I've always said, I believe that Steph Curry is like the point guard version of Tim Duncan, right? And I say that from the aspect of not only is he a winner, he's also a guy that's willing to sacrifice for the bigger prize. So I think when Kevin Durant came, he sacrificed a piece of his game to be able to fit Durant into their system because he knew that would mean more championships and more winning there. So I don't think he prioritized winning the Finals MVP while Kevin Durant was there, even though when you look at the numbers, he was almost just as productive as Kevin Durant. You could have very easily given a lot of those Finals MVPs to Steph Curry.
I mean, it's not exactly like he's giving up shots to PJ Tucker. I mean, it's Kevin Durant you're talking about
right,
there.
He's a great player, so he should.
Like, obviously, Durant is an option you want to use as much as you can within the framework of the system. So that team was just a super team. I just think that's the only reason that and it's not a knock on Steph. So I guess the great thing is we get to see now these two teams, head to head here. 4-7 games. I think that the Warriors are as Steph dependent as they've ever been.
For sure.
At this point, they need him more than ever. Clay just doesn't seem to do it night in, night out. He's been up and down. Wiggins up and down.
He still has some good spots.
Draymond's, just a defensive role player more often than not. Kevon Looney, a few other guys are starting to step up. Poole occasionally can do something, but the Warriors need Steph big time.
For sure.
And I think this Lakers team needs LeBron, but needs LeBron in a different way maybe than like you were just saying. In the Lakers series against Memphis, I think they had 5 different leading scorers in that series. Yeah. At least 4. Right, 4 or 5. So it was D'Angelo, it was LeBron, it was AD, it was Austin Reeves, I think, one game, and Rui Hachimura. Yeah. So they had 5 different leading scorers in that series, and pretty easily, I think, took care of the Grizzlies, considering what a lot of people were expecting out of that series. So this will be interesting to see what happens because. I think that the Warriors need more scoring out of Curry than the Lakers need out of LeBron.
Yeah, and let me be clear, too. When it comes to Steph Curry and what he's been, I don't think we're doing him enough justice by calling him the greatest shooter the game has ever seen. I think Steph Curry is one of the great players the game has ever seen. Like, I think you can make a really strong argument. Look, number 1 point guard of all time, I get it, Magic Johnson, it's hard to rule anybody over him. But if Steph Curry gets a 5th championship, another Finals MVP, when you look at, and once again with longevity, I think he's going to have a legit argument for being probably the best point guard to ever play, but one of the top 7 or 8 players to ever play. Just when you look at his body of work, what he has meant to that Golden State dynasty, sort of, that sort of championship run that they've had, I think that he's as influential, just think about his influence on the game.
Right.
as far as the Golden State team, as far as Steph Curry's influence on the game, I mean, now they won't even look at you as a prospect in the NBA if you're a guard unless you can shoot the three ball. Just look at everyone jacking up 30 or 40 threes a game. That's been Steph Curry's influence on the game of basketball. So I just say, if you're just calling him just the greatest shooter to ever play, to me, you're just not – that's not enough justice. That's not being specific enough. He's one of the best players.
Yeah. Also the best shooter, though. But I agree with you. In addition to, he doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't get his due for his ability to get to the bucket and score at his size, and for his ability to get free to hit those threes. I mean, he runs guys into the ground, runs elite athletes into the ground by his constant movement. So that's really impressive. And you mentioned how he's changed the game, and I think we can segue into last night's game because. Interestingly, the Celtics come out, shoot 57%, shoot much higher than that in the first half, and lose to the Sixers because Harden goes off for 45, including a dagger three. Melton, hits a bunch of threes. And after the game, Joe Mazzulla says, the Celtics coach says, I don't know if 26 threes attempted is a recipe for success for us. Meaning that they didn't take enough threes, yet they shot 57% and lost. So that, to me, speaks directly to the influence of the three-pointer on the game, and that the Celtics were outscored by 7 points on three-pointers. Philly hit 7 more three-pointers and ended up winning the game by 2. And
that's a crazy introduction, right? I mean, I think a lot of us, since James Harden has been in Philadelphia, obviously Joel Embiid was out last night. So I think a lot of us, since James Harden has been in Philadelphia, we kind of forgot a lot about who he was and who he has been, right? Because that team is obviously dominated by Joel Embiid. James Harden has sort of taken a step back last couple of years to be able to fit into a team that has an opportunity to win an NBA championship. But last night, I think James Harden shows you what he is and what he still can be. I mean, 45 points, game-winning shot, right in the mouth of Al Horford. I mean, that was crazy. That was Houston James Harden last night.
It was. So now you're going back a little ways, though, right, to get to Houston James Harden. So that's what he was.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's what he is over 7 games. I guess we'll find that out. But it's certainly he was not foul hunting, really, last night. He was just making buckets, on anybody that they put on him. He had a few good dishes in there too, a few good assists.
Yeah.
He controlled the game. Not just by scoring 45. He did it. He was efficient in the way that he did it. It was really a throwback game that I haven't seen. I haven't seen every James Harden game for the last few years, but it was unlike any James Harden game that I've seen personally in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. So that was something else last night. And I think that to some degree the Celtics were outcoached, and that's a really easy narrative when you have a guy like Doc Rivers going up against a rookie coach like Mazzulla.
For sure.
But I do think there was an edge there. I think that the Sixers did have all that time off. They have a young team that was really geared up to go for that game. They played the way they wanted to play. The Celtics played the way the Sixers wanted to play. The Celtics could not turn it on defensively, which they're going to have to do, obviously, to win this series or to get anywhere in these playoffs. Defensively, over the last 5 games, going back to the Hawks series, they've been borderline trash.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'll say about Harden was there's a clip floating around on social media after the game. The younger guys, Maxey and Paul Reed, is that his name?
Reed, yeah.
They were very pumped.
Yeah.
And he's on the floor saying it's one game. It's one game. Go back to the locker room. Let's go.
Yeah.
If that's the James Harden that's coming around for 7 games or however many it takes to beat the Celtics, they may just do that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, he was obviously aided by some bizarre mistakes last night by the Celtics. I think that was that Marcus Smart pass where he pretty much gave the ball to Tyrese Maxey.
That was Brogdon. Yeah, it was Brogdon, which is even more like it was. So it was. You're right. It was a Marcus Smart pass by Malcolm Brogdon.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and he goes down, and Tyrese Maxey even looked surprised that the ball even came his way. He was looking back for a whistle. It was like, really? This guy just threw me the ball for no reason?
He also wasn't sure if there was going to be a shot clock violation, so he almost laid it in as an afterthought, being like, well, if this counts, it counts, and it sure enough counted. There were a couple of things that happened in that game that you could point to, I guess, if you want. I'm not really that person to do it, but the last 2-minute came out. There was a key Tatum drive where he got tripped up, lost the ball out of bounds. On the last 2-minute report, the NBA said he should have been there should have been a foul on Harden. He did trip him inadvertently. I mean, that stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, it happens every game.
The bottom line is the Sixers were better last night than the Celtics.
But I think, we've seen Boston at different points. I think at different points in these playoffs, especially the last round against the Hawks, where they don't look like themselves for whatever reason. They maybe look kind of sluggish. Maybe they just know they're good enough to be able to overcome an early loss or something that.
That can't be it. Maybe they just love playing basketball so much they want to make each series at least 6 games. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it has to change between now and June if they're going to win Banner 18, because they will not get there with this up and down kind of thing that they've been doing. Yeah. They love to make the playoffs exciting,
right? It seems that way,
but. Guys, you don't need to. You can just come out and play, just solid basketball and do all right. Denver, speaking of solid basketball,
oh, man.
So I admittedly did not see much of this game last night, but seeing the score line after what was a pretty high-scoring game 1, low-scoring game 2, and I think this is a series, Scott, that's the home team just has a big advantage.
Yeah, and kind of when the playoffs first started, I thought Denver was kind of the cleanest team in the playoffs. And what I mean by that is when you look up and down their team and how they play basketball, there's not a lot of flaws on their team, right? I mean, they play basketball the right way. Jokic is a really clean player. And when that team, we thought last couple of years when Jokic was the league MVP, we just all kind of wondered what this team would be when he gets his horses back, when Jamal Murray came back healthy, when Michael Porter Jr. came back healthy. And now we're seeing the effects of everything just sort of coming together for Denver. To me, they played the best ball of any team in the playoffs so far, and they're not like Memphis. They're not a team that talks a good game and everything like that.
Yeah.
They just come out and they just play excellent basketball, efficient basketball. Jokic just play like an MVP. They just win. So to me, they're just kind of the team if you can fly under the radar as a number 1 seed, they're flying under the radar as much as any number 1 seed I've ever seen because they're playing excellent basketball while everyone's talking about the Lakers and Golden State and Boston and those teams. The team playing the best basketball right now in the playoffs is probably the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to throw Philadelphia into that mix too. They haven't lost yet, just based on that alone.
For sure.
But I will tap the brakes anyway a little bit on the Nuggets for a couple of reasons.
There we go.
Well, one, their bench is a little thin.
Yeah.
You're talking about, Uncle Jeff Green coming off the bench.
He's playing for 400 years now.
Yeah, right. He's got a lot of gray hairs. Bruce Brown, solid player, but that's your second best guy off the bench.
True.
And then it looks like that kid Brown, I think from Kansas, is their other guy they bring off the bench.
Yeah.
But impressive that they come out and win last night by 10 points, hold the Suns to 87, and Jamal Murray goes 3 of 15.
Yeah.
If you would have said Jamal Murray is going to play 39 minutes, go 3 of 15, and score you 10 points, say, all right, it's 1-1 going back to Phoenix, and it definitely wasn't. So Phoenix has got to figure it out. I guess Chris Paul tweaked something.
Yeah, they could be in
last
trouble.
Night,
he tweaked his groin. That seems to happen a lot to Chris Paul this time of year, doesn't it?
Well, especially when they're losing. So it's amazing how that happens. Anyway.
What are you insinuating, Fred?
Nothing. I'm just pointing out a fact. When they start to lose, he's injuries start to creep up.
Oh, my God.
So we'll see. I do think it's one of those series, though, that I wouldn't be surprised at all if Phoenix, wins the next 2 at home. And it might just be one of those typical NBA series that follows the home court advantage throughout.
Yeah.
But a team that had some home court advantage and didn't help them at all, Memphis Grizzlies, coming out and, according to Shams, saying under no circumstances, the team has informed Dylan Brooks that under no circumstances, all caps in the tweet, would he be coming back to the team. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Look, I look at that right now as kind of a classic overreaction, right? I mean, obviously Dylan Brooks has a lot of egg on his face right now because of how that series turned out. He came out, he talked a big game. Yeah. He talked, he said, a lot of bad things about LeBron James. LeBron James, obviously, he outplayed him. They got dusted in the final game of that series by 40 points. So, obviously, he looks like the fall guy for the Memphis Grizzlies. But I think, pump your brakes a little bit, right? I mean, Dylan Brooks, while he's not an all-star, I don't think he'll ever be an all-star player. He is a solid NBA player. He's a solid NBA starter. I think he's one of the key pieces to that Memphis team because I think he makes them what they are.
Yeah.
So I think this is a little bit prisoner of the moment by Memphis just coming out and saying that we're not going to keep him because I think they're just kind of salty right now because of what happened to them in the playoffs. And I think they probably blame him because of how he talked. But I think once cooler heads prevail, when they sort of settle down and get away from this for a little bit, they'll understand that Dylan Brooks is a nice piece for what they have. Just stay the course. Don't panic. Don't get, overly upset. It just wasn't your time yet. You're a young team. You're a young up-and-coming team. You probably made it to this point a little earlier than what was expected anyway.
I don't know about that necessarily. I think this season ended up being a little bit of a disappointment for them ultimately. Hold on. Let me just check. Brett, disappointment? Brett's going to just chime in.
Yes, the disappointment, and get that bomb out of Memphis.
Get
that bomb out.
Right, so that's exactly.
A disappointment. This was an embarrassment. All right, the entire state of Tennessee is embarrassed right now at the hand of the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. You talking about Dylan Brooks? Get him out of here. Get him out of here. He needs to be gone because he runs his mouth too much. And look what happened. You poked the bear poked back. All right, it happened. That's how it works.
See, everybody.
That's our AD representing the Lakers right there.
Up on Dylan Brooks. I'm just
look. Okay, so I'm going to say this. So obviously you think. I think. How did Shams get that information? Where did he get that information?
Got it right from the Memphis Grizzlies.
Okay, and then they came out and said, something about the culture problem and whatever. Maybe the culture problem stems from up top when you tell Shams, put in the tweet in all caps under no circumstances. Is that necessary?
No.
They set the guy on fire, for just say they're still evaluating it, or you tell them privately, look, we're not going to re-sign you. You could even say we're probably going to move on. But when you go that far, I think it's just not a good look for the organization as a whole to be like this was the reason that things didn't go well. I think if I had to slice up that blame pie for the Grizzlies this year, the biggest piece doesn't go to Dylan Brooks. It goes to Ja.
Sure. I agree with that. I think anytime, for obvious reasons for things that happen along the way, yes, Ja Morant probably is the number one reason to blame. But I think anytime an organization, anytime a team fails in the playoffs, I think their best player
fans overreact.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is top management, they can have their plan for next year. You just don't need to be so emphatic.
No.
They actually look bad by probably pandering to some of their fan base with the under no circumstances. Exactly. But whatever. That's
look, you can't do that. Like I say, I don't think that Dylan Brooks by in no means is a superstar player.
No.
But I think that loss in the playoffs to the Lakers was an organizational failure from top to bottom, starting with their best player. It trickled down throughout the season. They were a young, immature team whose time just hasn't arrived.
Also
yet.
had some injury issues, but whatever.
Sure,
Brett would probably come back in and talk about that. We're not going to let him because we're going on to our next.
NFL, man. We're going some NFL.
Yeah, we got to go to the NFL quick because we only got a few minutes left. This is an interesting topic, so I'm curious to know what you think, Scott, because you spend a lot of time around the Dogs. You know these players really well. Mm-hmm. Which one of them is going to have the best NFL career, and maybe it can also be like relative to where they were picked.
Right. So it'd be easy to say Jalen Carter because he went first, but I think so. I really like, when you look at it. Obviously, you got half the team going to the Eagles right now, right? So and a lot of them are going to be kind of dependent on right now. But I think when you look at I think Kelee Ringo is going to be a really good bargain for where he was taken, right? I think he was taken in the 4th round by the Eagles. He's a guy who fell, right? Because let's be real, in that national championship game against Ohio State, he was out there fighting for his in that semifinal against Ohio State. Kelee Ringo was out there fighting for his life against Marvin Harrison Jr.
You said his name. That's all I thought of.
Yeah.
And he was. By the way, he was losing that battle.
Yeah, he was losing that battle, and there was a lot of times throughout the season where there was a big play and he kind of looked bad on it. So I think his stock dropped throughout the season. But he's a baller. He can play. So I think if he has a good coaching staff like the Eagles that really works with him. Remember, coming to the season, he was seen as a first round, maybe like a mid-first round talent. So I think that if the right coaches work with him, and the Eagles are a really good organization, I think if the right coaches work with Kelee Ringo, he can become a Pro Bowl player at some point. That's my pick.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the great thing about this is we got to wait to find out.
For sure.
He was not my guy on this list. And I think a part of it had to do with what happened in that semifinal. He was having a rough go of it there.
He was fighting for his life.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
He was hanging on.
Wasn't winning that one. It's actually a really tough call because I look at this Dogs draft and I don't see guys, in my estimation, that stand out like some past Dogs that have gone to the NFL. Obviously, Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
But I still have questions. I can't help but hear Coach Smart saying, he's a generational talent and think that that's kind of a backhanded compliment, to say all the talent in the world is there,
right.
But, I guess the guys like him on the team, but there were whispers, again, that usually come out of a coaching staff that he was not the easiest to coach, that he didn't handle hard coaching well.
For sure.
Now, he's got a culture fit that should be pretty good there in Philadelphia. So, I love Darnell Washington, and I was surprised to see him fall as far as he did, all the way down to Pittsburgh, and what looks like, what's that, like late third or early fourth, whatever that was.
Fourth round.
So, I think in watching the Dogs play, I felt like with Brock Bowers out there, he wasn't going to get as many many balls thrown his way. But when he did, I thought he did pretty well with them. I guess at the end of the day, there was the video of him moving the sled. Did you see that at the combine compared to the other tight ends?
Yep.
But then there was also a lot of analysts saying, he's not that good of a blocker. So I
thought that's what he did the best, honestly. But
but I guess when it came down to it and they dissected the film, they were like, okay, he's going to have some trouble with this, that, and the other.
Gotcha.
Again, I don't really know because I didn't dissect the film, but I was a big fan of his.
Me too.
Coming out. And then there's always guys like Kenny McIntosh. Could he be a good third down back in the NFL? Is there really still like a third down back in the NFL? It seems like that's kind of gone away a little bit. It's more like two guys that kind of share the load a little bit more.
And running back is normally the easiest transition too, from college to the pros, to as far as what you're asked to do.
Right, and it's one, even though the Falcons took Bijan at 7 or 8 rather, it's one where guys who are 5th, 6th, 7th rounders can have big impact early on. So I guess my final call will be Jack Podlesny will be the impact player.
All right, so real quick here, so we got to wrap this up. What's on your mind, Fred?
Looking at that schedule just came out, that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be exciting, but at the same time, it's like it's just a farm system now at this point.
For sure.
It's crazy how that's going to be. 12 teams involved.
Gotcha.
You'll be playing well into the NFL playoffs. Still having college football games. But great news is for those of us that like football, they'll be on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, so they'll be all over the place.
Yeah. So real quick, what's on my mind? I didn't get a chance to get in here since the Falcons had their draft last week. Bijan Robinson seemed kind of bizarre. That seemed to be kind of a bizarre first round pick.
Yeah.
Just when you look at the NFL over the last 10 to 15 years or so, the running back position normally hasn't been prioritized. As a matter of fact, it's been long known that you can get really good productive backs in rounds 3, rounds 4, or mainly even like that second round is where a lot of teams go for running back. So to me, to take one top 10 seems kind of risky, but it seems like the Falcons do have a plan. They want to surround Desmond Ridder with as much talent as possible and hopefully see him thrive. And so we'll see how that works out.
All right. One last thing I'll say on that note. Saw a tweet today that had Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan ranked like in the top 5 of the last 15 years of running back prospects that have come out. Of the top 15 on that list, not a single one has won a Super Bowl.
Exactly. So, Fred, hey, man, it's been nice talking some NBA to you, man. I love it. I love it when you're here, man. So we can talk a lot of NBA. We can talk about this all day, but unfortunately they only give us a half hour. So.
All right. Good times. Take it easy, Scott.
See you guys tomorrow.
See ya.